The cruiser pulled out from behind the gas station like a predator testing the wind. No siren, no call-in. Just instinct, or something they like to call that. The moment they saw her black sedan glide past, their eyes locked in unspoken agreement. 2 white officers, 1 patrol car, and a woman driving alone. She was barely 100 feet ahead when the lights snapped on. A sudden burst of red and blue, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the early morning haze like warning flares. To them, this wasn't about safety. It was about presence, about reminding someone, anyone, who was in control. They pulled her over like they'd done it 100 times before, like it was routine, like it was nothing. But today wasn't like the others. The woman behind the wheel didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She didn't even ask why. Her hands stayed fixed at 10 and 2, steady. Her breath was calm. Her gaze was forward. She knew how this worked. She'd lived it too many times to pretend it was an accident. But this time, she also knew something they didn't. Because the badge she carried wasn't in the glove compartment. It was pinned to her chest. Signed by the governor, stamped with the weight of an entire department. She was Chief Tori Mitchell, and this stop, this moment of arrogance, was about to rewrite the balance of power in Redwood Heights forever. They thought they were reminding her who held authority on these streets. They were wrong. They had just stopped their boss. And the shift in this town started with the sound of gravel crunching under her tires, and 2 officers walking straight into history. They thought she was just another black woman on the road, but by the time they realized who she was, it was already too late. Every promotion she earned was shadowed by someone whispering she'd only gotten it because of the optics. Every mistake she didn't make still found its way into reports, twisted, inflated, spun. She wasn't just working against criminals, she was fighting a system designed to reject her presence before she even stepped through the door. Redwood Heights was no exception. A town where patrol cars outnumbered community programs, where the phrase law and order didn't mean the same thing if you were black. And yet, Tori Mitchell broke through. Not because they welcomed her, because they couldn't stop her. She outlasted captains who doubted her. She outperformed lieutenants who sabotaged her, and when they ran out of excuses to hold her back, they gave her the badge, reluctantly, publicly, and under pressure. The town's announcement made the local papers. Redwood Heights appoints first black police chief. But that headline wasn't the real story. The real story was the decades she spent confronting a department where racial profiling wasn't a flaw. It was a norm. The real story was the dozens of complaints buried, dismissed, or erased by the very people who now had to salute her. And the real story was the fire in her chest that hadn't dimmed one bit, not after 22 years in uniform. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a war zone she now had the keys to. Tori knew they were watching her, waiting for her to stumble, to soften, to fail. But they didn't understand her kind of leadership. She didn't come to please. She came to purge. And on her first day in charge, dressed in plain clothes, no motorcade, no press conference. She just wanted to make it to headquarters without incident. But Redwood Heights had a way of testing people like her, even when they were the ones meant to lead. What those 2 officers didn't know was this: today was supposed to be her quiet beginning. Instead, it would be their public reckoning. The cruiser came fast, too fast for a routine stop. No broken taillight, no missed signal, no valid reason at all. Just a black woman in a nice car, and in Redwood Heights, that was reason enough. Tori Mitchell eased her sedan to the shoulder, tires pressing into damp gravel as the red and blue strobes painted the rear view in warning. She exhaled slowly. Not in fear, in preparation. This wasn't her first time being pulled over without cause. but it was the first time they were about to make that mistake with their own chief. She didn't move, didn't reach, didn't speak. Let them lead. Let them reveal themselves. The doors creaked open on the patrol car behind her. 2 silhouettes stepped out, Sergeant. Blake Turner, barrel-chested, late 40s, the kind of man who clung to the past like a badge itself. And OFC. Ryan Cooper was young, eager, and already smirking as he adjusted his belt like a cowboy at high noon. Turner approached first, slow and deliberate, a swagger wrapped in suspicion. His hand hovered close to his holster, not quite drawing, but not relaxed either. He leaned in slightly, scanning her face with the same look he'd give a stranger caught peering into his garage. "License and registration," he said flatly. No greeting. No explanation. Tori gave a slight nod and reached into the glove box, her movements measured, precise. The choreography every black driver learns to survive. She handed over the documents without a word. Turner's eyes narrowed, trying to place her, but nothing registered. Then came Cooper, cocky, loud, and itching to escalate. "Not from around here, are you?" he asked, his tone soaked in insinuation. "This neighborhood's had a few issues. Just making sure you're not lost." Tori stared ahead, unmoved. "I'm on my way to work," she said calmly. "Oh yeah?" Cooper leaned closer, smirk sharpening. "And where's that?" She let the question hang. She could shut this down now, drop the title, flash the badge, end the game. But she didn't, because this wasn't just about her. It was about what officers like them did when they thought no one was watching. Today, Tori Mitchell was watching very much. OFC. Ryan Cooper tilted his head, that smug half-smile still plastered across his face. He thought he was clever, thought he had her figured out. Black woman. Alone, early morning, nice car. That was all he needed to assume the worst. That was all he needed to think he was in charge. "What are you doing in this area?" he asked, voice just a little too loud, just a little too proud. The question wasn't about safety, it wasn't about protocol, it was about control. But Tori Mitchell didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't give him the satisfaction of defensiveness. Instead, she turned her head ever so slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. Not confrontational, not hostile. Just steady. Just sure. "You'll find out soon enough," she said. 5 words. Calm. Crisp, deadly quiet, not a threat. Not a plea. But a promise delivered with the kind of poise that made men like Cooper deeply uncomfortable. For a moment, something shifted in his posture. Not much, but enough. His grin faded ever so slightly. His jaw tensed, because suddenly she wasn't just another morning stop. She wasn't folding. Wasn't flustered. And worst of all, she wasn't afraid, Sergeant. Blake Turner stepped in now, sensing the atmosphere thicken. His tone dropped a degree. More forceful. Less casual. "Let's not make this difficult, ma'am," he said, low and pointed. "We can take this further if need be." There it was. The shift. From casual suspicion to veiled threat, the kind issued with a badge in one hand and ego in the other. Tori exhaled silently, her face unreadable. She'd been here before, too many times, and always on the receiving end of someone else's assumption. But not today. Today, they weren't just profiling a stranger. They were testing the very woman who would soon sign off on their conduct reports. And the irony was delicious. They thought they were pressing her. But with one sentence, one unshaken glance, she was already pressing them. Sergeant Blake Turner squared his shoulders, voice tightening like a coiled spring. "We can do this the hard way, ma'am." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning, one he'd probably used 100 times before, with drivers who couldn't push back, who didn't dare to. But this time, he said it to the wrong woman. Tori didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink. She didn't ask for permission. She cut through him like a razor. "I'm Chief Tori Mitchell," she said. "What do you two want to do next?" Silence detonated in the air. Cooper's smirk died instantly, his mouth frozen mid-breath. Turner stepped back half an inch, as if the words had landed like a shove to the chest. His eyes darted to her hands. Then her face, then back to his partner. A wordless plea for this to somehow not be real. But it was. And they both knew it. Chief Tori Mitchell. The woman they had just profiled, questioned, and threatened was the incoming head of their department. Turner tried to recover, lips parting as if to speak, but nothing came. Cooper's eyes flicked to the badge number on her registration, finally connecting the dots far too late. Tori didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The silence said it all. This wasn't a gotcha moment. It was a reckoning, delivered not with rage, but with undeniable fact. She let the weight of her title hang there, unblinking. "What do you want to do next?" That wasn't a question. That was an invitation. To either dig the hole deeper or start crawling out of it. And the worst part for them, she still hadn't left her seat, still hadn't raised her voice, still hadn't threatened a single thing. But the ground beneath them had shifted, completely. What began as a power play had become a full-blown collapse, not of authority, but of assumptions. And now, for the first time in their careers, they were the ones being watched. Sergeant Turner finally found his voice. He cleared his throat and tried to muster some version of damage control. "There must have been a misunderstanding, Chief." But Tori Mitchell didn't let him finish. She cut in, crisp, cold, and absolutely final. "No, this isn't a misunderstanding." Her words dropped like a gavel. "This is a clear manifestation of a broken system, and you both just proved it still thrives." Neither man spoke. The silence wasn't respectful. It was exposed. Cooper's shoulders curled in slightly, as if trying to disappear inside his own uniform. Turner, normally unshakable, stood like a man watching the foundation crack under his feet. Tori didn't shout. She didn't posture. But every word she spoke carried the weight of years, of being followed, questioned, doubted, dismissed. And now, standing in the eye of the very storm that had churned against her for decades, she wasn't asking for accountability. She was declaring it. "I will be personally reviewing every patrol report you file," she said evenly. "Every stop, every interaction. Every word." She let that settle. "You'll be reporting directly to me, starting today." Turner opened his mouth again, softer now. "Chief, we didn't mean any—" "I don't care what you meant," Tori interrupted. "It's what you did that matters. And I'm done pretending intent erases impact." Her gaze swept between the two men. "I fought my whole life to be in this seat. Not so I could wear a title, but so I could put a mirror in front of this department and say, this is who we've become. And it's going to stop." Both officers were still as statues, but their power, what little they thought they had already evaporated. Tori turned back toward her car, the moment closing with the soft click of her door. No grand exit, no final word, just the thunderous truth she left behind. And two officers were standing in the wreckage of their assumptions. The room was packed. Uniforms lined the back wall. Badges caught the light. Some faces wore practiced indifference, others quiet dread. It was Chief Tori Mitchell's first full-force meeting, and no one could pretend they didn't know why they were there. She stood at the front, with no podium and no notes, just her voice. And the truth. "I'm not here to make a list," she began, her tone flat but unwavering. "I'm here to stop the things that are silently destroying people's trust." A flicker moved through the room. Some bristled, some stiffened. She didn't wait. "This morning I was pulled over by two of our own," she said, "not for speeding. Not for a taillight. Not for anything except being a black woman driving alone at sunrise." No one laughed. No one shifted. She wasn't telling a story. She was delivering a mirror. "They didn't know who I was," she continued. "And I didn't tell them, because I wanted to see what they'd do when they thought I was just another name they didn't have to remember." She paused. "They failed." The silence grew heavier, stretching across the floor like spilled oil. "I won't name them." "Not today. That's not the point," she said. "But what I will say is this. If the badge on your chest gives you permission to act differently based on who's behind the wheel, you don't deserve to wear it." A few heads lowered. Tori scanned the room, slow and deliberate. "This department doesn't need a new face," she said. "It needs a new conscience." She took one step forward. "Every stop will be reviewed. Every complaint will be heard. Every officer will be held accountable, not just for what they do, but for what they've gotten used to ignoring." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The time of hiding behind silence is over. You don't get to be neutral in a system that punishes people for existing. There it was, the line that cut through every defense, every excuse. She let the silence speak now, and this time it sounded a lot like change. No one clapped. No one dared. The room sat under the weight of her words, not crushed, but exposed. And that was enough. Some officers looked down at their boots, as if they might find an excuse in the scuff marks. A few shifted in their seats, clearing throats that didn't need clearing. But others, just a few, nodded. Not out of obligation, but recognition. They'd seen it too. Felt it, maybe even been silent about it for too long. And now someone had said it out loud, not as an outsider throwing accusations, but as their chief telling the truth that no one else had dared to say in that room. Tori didn't pace. She didn't pound the table. She stood still, eyes steady, voice low. And they listened, not because they were told to, because they couldn't not. It was the kind of silence that doesn't ask for applause. It demands reflection, and the kind that marks the beginning of something irreversible. Tori scanned the room one last time, not seeking approval, but accountability, and then she walked out. No orders barked. No slogans, just the click of her shoes on tile, each step louder than a megaphone. Behind her, the officers stayed seated, not paralyzed, but processing. For the first time in years, maybe ever, the Redwood Heights Police Department wasn't led by tradition. It was led by truth. And truth, when spoken plainly, without fear, has a sound that echoes long after the room goes quiet. The engine purred beneath her fingertips as Tori Mitchell pulled back onto the road. The same road where just hours earlier she had been profiled, questioned, and threatened. Now she drove it not as a suspect, not as a target, but as chief. In her rearview mirror, the two officers still stood by their cruiser. Smaller now, their certainty fractured, their roles reversed. They weren't giving orders anymore. They were remembering them. The sun was higher now, sharper, unforgiving, and so was the truth. Tori didn't smile. There was nothing triumphant about being right in a system so deeply wrong. But as the tires hummed beneath her, she felt something deeper than satisfaction. Control. For the first time, she wasn't reacting to power. She was defining it. In a town where uniforms had long shielded prejudice, she had become a disruption, a reckoning in a navy blue suit. The news would spread. It always did. But it wouldn't be the headlines that changed things. It would be the tone in the room when she entered. The pause before a question. The measured decisions of those who once moved without consequence. She had become something bigger than a title. To some, a symbol of hope. To others, it was a storm and a calm that they thought would last forever. But to herself, she was simply ready. This is just the beginning, she thought, the words silent but strong. But I am no longer afraid, because now I am the one leading the way. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it drives quietly, undefeated, unapologetic. And it knows exactly where it's going. Voice-over outro suggestion for the video. If you believe leadership should challenge systems, not protect them, share this story. Let them know. Silence is no longer an option.